Welcome to the first episode of Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Texas. What this podcast is going to be is a Gen Z political perspective on many issues: the culture war, gun rights, social conservatism in general, and hearing out a whole lot of Gen Z perspective. And a lot of the mainstream, there are many Gen Z voices who go shilling, probably would be a good word for it, could be something better, for the establishment, for corporations, for this current government. A whole lot of Gen Z mainstream voices love to shill for the current system, and we need Gen Z voices who do not simp for this system. The system that is very corrupt, system that does not want to do good for the people, and has blatantly disregarded our constitutional rights: free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom to assemble, right to bear arms, privacy, basically all of our rights and states' rights. First issue, well, I really feel like discussing traces back to Saturday, because a lot of people have put their viewpoints up of the near tragedy that almost caused a whole lot of issues for our nation, and that was the attempt on President Trump's life. And there's a whole lot of divided viewpoints on this. Some people love to say that it was staged, which blatantly is a disgusting lie, because one person died saving their family and two are in a hospital in serious condition. And then there's a viewpoint of government had something to do with it, that was either intentional or blatant incompetence. And the viewpoint of it being intentional is very plausible. When you look at leaks, there's this 4chan post a while back, like earlier this week, somebody either claiming to be the sniper who took out the Trump shooter, or somebody who knows the Secret Service sniper saying that the Secret Service director told them that they did not have clearance to take the kid out, although they had visual on him for quite a little bit, and the person who wound up taking the shooter out disobeyed orders, which blatantly is a good thing that he did that, or else we would be in a whole lot of not so much of a great situation right now. Not to mention, while before, there are people who saw the kid crawling slowly on that roof and were trying to alert police, and they did nothing, which is slightly incriminating. And as a kid, visit that location multiple times, ranging it out, using a rangefinder, which, if you don't know what a rangefinder is, a lot of hunters use it to scope out distances of where they're going to be taking a shot on something, which that in of itself is extremely concerning. And what the Secret Service director said about the roof being too sloped to be a safety risk, is inherently false. The Secret Service sniper that took the shot was on a roof that was more sloped than that, and it was within a distance that they needed to have manned in a normal amount of security, or a heightened amount of security in a location like that. Normally a position like that would be manned by personnel, especially because of how much of a visual they had, which that in of itself is an extreme failure. And when you look at what's happened to people who have spoken out against these figures in the past, really brings up the question: did either that kid, was he acting alone, or was he groomed by a foreign actor or a U.S. agency? As we look back to another thing that happened a couple years back in Buffalo, there can be parallels drawn to that, as a kid who committed that horrific act his uncle claims that he was groomed by a Fed, and parallels to what this kid tried to do draws a whole lot of parallels. I mean, this kid was a loner, he was bullied, he had some pretty interesting views, and if what he had tried succeeded, that would have been an extremely tragic event. Rest in peace to the father who lost his life, and there seriously needs to be congressional investigation over what happened. Extremely. Just like what happened with Ruby Ridge, there needs to be a subcommittee that investigates the fullness of all of this. Changing to a topic that's not as depressing at all, this week was the still technically going on, the Republican National Convention. So we saw Monday was the delegate roll call to officially assign delegates to each candidate. And we had some interesting moments. Of course, the head of the the head of the GOP delegation, or you can call him representative of the GOP delegation from Massachusetts, when he was doing a roll call, instead of saying Massachusetts, he called it Magachusetts or Magachusetts, which is funny, but at the same time extremely ironic considering how liberal the state of Massachusetts is, and the fact that it's almost impossible to make a Republican congressional district in that state. Hopefully future changes for that, but that's extremely ironic. Monday was also proof that it's good that Mitch McConnell is retiring. As we all saw, he is representing the Kentucky delegation, and as he was being booed, although I'll give it to him that he stumbled over his speech a little bit due to the amount of boos he was getting, he really stumbled over the announcement of Kentucky's delegates, showing off how much cognitive decline the Senate Minority Leader has seen over the past couple of years. Not even his policy, but his physical health is enough reason alone on why he needs to retire. Extremely. And it's good that in December that we're going to be seeing a new Senate Minority Leader, and McConnell's finally retiring after, what was like 40 or something years in office. Long enough for, more than likely, he'd be seeing a position of President pro tempore, or at least competing for it with Senator Grassley if we were to get the Senate majority back in November, which is extremely likely, as we've seen. Biden's basically lost his election. Another great moment from this past week was the official announcement that got Trump over the required amount of delegates. Florida was announced by his, not sure if it's his oldest or one of his younger sons, Eric. Eric Trump officially announced the delegates of Florida, which in turn gave Trump the nomination officially. It's, of course, great moment because he's officially RNC nominee. Another key moment from this week, Trump chose Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio as his vice president. Some people torch this pick, but it's not a bad pick. He brings in populist appeal, Rust Belt appeal, the appeal to the workers. Great comeback story from not having a great childhood, not being that well off, to becoming a pretty successful entrepreneur. Brings in the Rust Belt appeal for states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Helps bring in the further right branches of the party, including a lot of young conservative voters back in with some of his more harder stances on things like abortion, gun rights, whole lot the spectrum, which I tend to agree with, especially with Trump's move closer to the center, which that helps bring in a whole lot of voters back in, while at the same time Trump has grown in a huge, or as he calls it, huge aspect of moderate and independent voters, because independent voters are going to be one of the keys to winning this election. Not to mention RFK potentially overperforming and taking a lot of votes from Biden. Other than that, and another huge thing that happened this week, Trump has been the first, I believe, since 1988, first Republican nominee to gain the endorsement of the Teamsters, one of the biggest working unions in the U.S. First since H.W. Bush in 1988. There was an election in 98. First since H.W. Bush to officially gain the endorsement. And Teamsters president had an amazing quote, which I'm not going to repeat, but shows off how a lot of working class Americans feel about Trump, as Trump's grown and appealed to a lot of voters. Middle class voters, rich voters, as we've seen gaining the endorsements of a lot of Silicon Valley tech heads, CEOs, all those guys. Middle class with economic policy, and lower middle class and impoverished as well, as we've seen by a lot of hood endorsements and rappers. For example, when he did the rally in the Bronx, how he got multiple rappers' endorsements, showing off how he has an appeal to the hood. And totally not joking about how he secretly, how orange is the new black. Totally not going to joke about that despite what he's seen in the past 2 years. Trump is completely on the path to victory. It's his election to lose unless somebody tries to pull off fraud, which don't see as likely of how many votes Trump's going to get. And last minute of this episode, I'm going to go with an extremely hot take, more fringe amount of people go with, and I'm going to 100% support this. Not support what's happening, but support the reasons why I think this is going to happen. Biden is not going to make it as president. Not going to say anything's going to happen to him. He is not going to make it on the ticket, as we've seen in the past week, where he announced he would drop out of the presidential race if he was diagnosed with COVID or literally any illness. And he was diagnosed with COVID, I believe, yesterday. And seeing some sources claim that there's a huge rift going on between Biden and Obama. And apparently, according to some sources, within the past 2 days, we've seen a rift between Harris advisors and Biden advisors, as some advisors for Vice President Harris are saying that Biden needs to step aside, which is huge because not only is the Democratic Party divided right now, which helps a huge chance for Trump to win, even basically the heads of the Democratic Party have turned on each other. It's reportedly a rift between the Obamas and Bidens, for example, which that's huge because arguably one of the biggest faces of the Democratic Party turning on a sitting Democratic president, although the influence Barack has makes it to where it's almost, I'm not going to say undemocratic because we aren't a democracy, but it's basically undemocratic, the political influence Obama has over the party. And the reason I say that is because no matter what the voters want, everything that happens is almost because of his say-so. And I'm just going to end it off with this. Trump is on the road to victory, potentially a landslide. Trump 2024, MAGA, America First, and God bless Texas. Thank you, God bless, and good day.